What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and from the Miggs and Swig show, Saturdays from 11 to 2 p.m. on 102.5 The Bone, Ben Swig is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? I feel like I've made it to the pinnacle of my radio career. I am on the world famous. Let's just sink it in for a second. I'm on the world famous, world renowned, award winning, correct?
Yeah.
Hoppe Hour.
But I'm with Ben Swig right now, and that's a good thing, too. Look at you, man. You're on the front page of a magazine. Dude, you're kicking ass.
Yeah. The bar's pretty low, I guess, for this podcast and that magazine.
How crazy was it that now you're on the cover of a magazine?
It was pretty crazy. I mean, it was pretty surreal to see, it's like hearing your voice on radio. It's like you're the worst critic. It doesn't sound like you think it sounds. And then I look at that picture and I look like a douche. I got the Zoolander, because what I wanted to do was smile.
Yeah.
Like I was smiling because I like to smile. And the photographer's like, okay, don't smile. And then I wouldn't smile. And he goes, oh, you look mad, or you look too mean. He goes, give me a little grin. So I closed my mouth and I grinned. And I look like a Zoolander, the Zoolander pose.
I don't think it looks that bad. I've seen a lot worse, though. I've seen a lot douchier. Like, yours isn't that douchey. You just have this, like, hard-ass vibe.
Well, the funny thing is, the reason he told me to smirk a little bit, he didn't say I look mad. He goes, you look too hard. You don't look very welcoming. So
Yeah.
put a little smile on it.
But, dude, within the article, there were a lot of things that I didn't know about you, and it was absolutely fascinating. It was fascinating to read, because one of the things about your ex-wife, Nikki, I didn't know. I knew you guys were cool now, but there was a part where it said that you and your son, Asher, and Nikki plan on going on a vacation, just the three of you guys, very soon. I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It is a little surreal. I know that when we, plan the divorce, but we decided to get divorced. I came from a family that was didn't have the nicest divorce, and I had two brothers and a sister. And, basically we were just put in the middle of it, and we were handed a big fat emotional bill to pay for that we had nothing to do with. It wasn't our decision for our parents to get divorced. So when Nikki and I got divorced, one of the things that I told her is, you and I not getting along isn't an option. I said, we have to put our big boy pants on and, take all the romance and finance and everything else that comes with divorce that makes it go bad, got to take it out of it. And we have to do, and it was simple. We just had a simple sort of mantra or mission or litmus test was, what's best for Asher? So every decision we made had to answer that question. We joke around that we faked it till we made it, and we did. And now we have this real, authentic, beautiful relationship where, I'm remarried, she's remarried, I have two more kids, she's like a mother to my kids. I live 5 houses down. And the Africa trip was something that when Asher, my son, has always loved animals. He was like a savant at like 3 years old, knew all the animals' names. And we always said we were going to take him to Africa. But, I guess you need shots from malaria stuff, and they don't recommend until you're 12 years old. But obviously we got divorced in the middle of that. But part of the divorce was like, you are not taking Asher to South Africa without me. And she'd say, you're not taking Asher to South Africa without me. So the two of us are taking them this summer.
So what is advice you're going to give Asher and your two other kids about dating, where you don't want them to go through the whole thing of divorce because you've had it happen to you with your mom and dad? And then with Nikki, what are some things you're going to tell your kids and Asher to make sure that they wait for the perfect person?
Well, I wish I had that answer. I don't, and I think that to think that I do would be foolish, because no one goes into a divorce marriage thinking they're going to get divorced.
Yeah.
So, I think that the only thing I can tell them is just to make sure at the time. Well, I think everybody was sure at the time, but that it's real, and it's you can love that person. And I didn't learn this about love until I met my, current wife, that she loves me, the bad parts and the good parts. Like, she doesn't try, she knows I'm flawed. We're all flawed. But she loves the flawed parts of me as much as she loves the good parts, which are very little.
She has this pride when she was hanging out with you at the company Christmas event last month for Cox Media. The way she would look at you, it was like she took pride in being your wife.
Yeah. She loves me. There's no question. You know, I keep her well drugged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep her well sedated.
That's the key to it.
That's what I'm going to tell you. Just keep them well medicated.
Dude, so what do you do? You're a very busy guy. Like, I don't even know what you do. Like, what do you do overall? It's like you do this and you do that. It seems like you're never not working.
Well, and the funny thing about the article was where I wanted to go with it was it doesn't talk much about my job.
Yeah.
Right. And it's about, it's called Tampa Bay Business, whatever it's called, Business and Wealth. We talked a lot about my job, but I don't, it bothers me a lot. Like, first thing, people ask you when they meet you, within, I give it a minute and a half is, what do you do? Right. And to me, it's a very tough question to ask because I don't do one of anything. I do probably as much as possible without doing anything at all. And if you have to like categorize it, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I invest in companies, some active, some passive. I do a lot of real estate development, and I do things so I can enjoy the other parts of my life, which are family, and other things that don't associate with what I do, but more who I am. So that's where I wanted the article to go. It talked about my sobriety. It talked about my, the most of it was about that, and my ex-wife situation than it is what I do.
What was the breaking point when you were doing drugs in the 90s? What was the moment where it was your breaking point where everything went bad and you were at the biggest low of your life? What was the moment when you realized you had to change what you were doing? It wasn't a burning bush, Ryan. It wasn't a aha moment. It wasn't, I had an overdose. I was clinically dead. I had plenty of incidents with the law. Where you would think, okay, that's enough. But for me, it was an aha moment, but it wasn't what you would think it was. It was, I had reached a point. It was one day I woke up and I had reached a point where I was done. And, I'd already been to 2 treatment centers. I'd already done, AA. I had already done all this stuff. And, I'd relapsed. I'd spent, a month or so, relapsed, in my disease. And I just woke up one day and I said, you know what? It was the moment of clarity. You talk about a moment of clarity. It was that I was just like, I had enough. And I went to my therapist and I got help. So I know they say once you're an addict for the rest of your life. Yep. Like, it never leaves you. When has there been a moment, though, because you've been clean for so long, when was there a moment within the last 25 years that you began to not be as much of an addict, if that makes sense? Like, I've been through a heartbreak for the last 7 months, and like the first 3 to 4 months were really hard, but now it's getting a lot easier for you. What was the time in your life where it's been easier to be an addict, if that makes sense?
Well, so it's one of those things that it's not a curable disease. It's a treatable disease, and I will always be, whether it's, the first day I walked in or, November 3rd when I picked up 24 years, I'll always be an alcoholic and an addict.
Yes.
But I'm just not an active alcoholic and addict. But there's been some tough times in my life. There's been divorce. There's been some great times that I would like to celebrate, birth, 2 marriages,
yeah.
Some deaths. And so, but to me, now I think it's been half my life that I've been sober. So I've definitely been sober longer than I used, but now so it's just part of my life. I don't think about drinking. Sometimes I'll have the thought.
And you went to a drunken fest last month, which was the company Christmas party, and you were so chill. There was no version up front of you seeming like an addict, like shaking or needing a drink. Like, you were very chill.
No, I mean, I went on the Celtic cruise.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's around. I have no problem with it. You know, I have no problem with other people doing it. It doesn't. I mean, there is a part of me, if we're being honest here, there is a part of me sometimes when I'm at my low point, I guess, or when I have my guards down, where I think, okay, you were only 21 when you got sober. You know, maybe it was just a phase.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You know, maybe it was just because I was 21. That's what 21 years. Maybe I can drink normally again. But then I got to play the movie all the way through and to the end and really like say, okay, but what if it wasn't, right? Like, what's the risk reward in me having a drink or a drug? It's like, yeah, maybe getting a little buzzed and I could do it normally is the reward, but the risk is losing, you know, everything, my family, you know, my everything.
Yeah,
is the risk. So it's just not worth it.
When was the moment? So when you were on drugs and then you got off of drugs and now you're clean. What's the biggest thing you miss out on life or you miss noticing because you're so busy being high, if that makes sense? Like, what's the one thing you begin to notice more once you're sober? Because when you're high, you're just overthinking. You're not there. What was like the first thing you saw about life now that you've been sober the last 20 years?
You know what? For me, it's the feelings. For me, it's being able to actually feel feelings.
Yeah.
And go through it and realize, you know, you said you were going through a heartbreak. Like, there's the drugs and the alcohol were the cop out. You know, that's the way of just avoiding it. And that's what I was doing my whole life.
Because the worst thing you can possibly do is try to like hide your demons or just put your thoughts to the back of your brain.
Yeah, they don't go anywhere,
like,
bro.
At some point, you just got to.
They don't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, a lot of alcoholics and addicts suffer from is, you know, we try to we have these feelings and we don't like the way we feel. We take a drink or drug and it works for everybody, really, and you feel better, right? But for so long, I poured so much drugs and alcohol on top of those feelings that once I got sober, yeah, they sucked at first. Like, these feelings came up and they were dealing and having to deal with it. But now I enjoy it. You know, I enjoy having to go through the highs and the lows because I know the other side is going to be that much better.
What has your wife Nadia done to help out your life? Like, what were you missing in your life before you met her?
You know what? There's so much, but when I met Nadia, it was probably the worst time for Nadia and I to meet. I had just recently, I think it was about 8-9 months, Nikki and I had split up. We were living in separate houses. I was not looking to fall in love at all. And so Nadia walks in this restaurant one night, and I knew I was in trouble. We started talking, and we went out the next night, and I knew I was in trouble. But part of me was fighting it for a long time. Yeah. You know, and you know, we joke around a lot. And she says, Ben and I have been dating I've been dating Ben for 12 years. He's been dating me for 10. Because I was a douchebag. You know, and it's not my character, but I was cheating on her. You know, I was, because I was fighting falling in love again because I didn't want to get hurt again, you know, and I didn't want to get divorced again. And I didn't want to bring kids in this world and having to go through with that. It was just the absolute worst time. Dude,
I've been kind of going through that too. Like, ever since my breakup, I've been seeing a few girls and they've left immediately because 2 years ago, if I hadn't met my first 2 girlfriends, I probably would want them to be my girlfriend. But now that I've been through 2 relationships in 3 years, I'm kind of just like chilling, and I'd rather be single because I'm just like, what if I want to hook up with a girl and I'm in a relationship and I'm just being real?
Right. No, and that's, you know, but I wasn't man enough.
Yeah.
To, you know, when we had that talk that every relationship has about, you know, are we monogamous? Are we seeing other people? And instead of being a man about it and saying, you know, I'm not in the right place, I'm not ready, I like you, I like hanging out with you, but I'm just not ready. I said, let's be in a monogamous relationship. So nobody else had her. Yeah. You know, but meanwhile, I was around, you know, douching around in my douche canoe. You know, she, thank goodness that she's, you know, stuck by. She understood. She was able to forgive me, and she understood what I was going through. And, you know, that's probably what she's taught me most, to answer your question, or what, you know, what I've learned most from her is about about loving people, you know, about loving, and we talked about earlier, about loving the whole person, and not just picking this and that and this. I love this, I don't like this. You know, how many times you hear, at least I went through with Nikki, is if onlys. Like, if only she did this, if only she acted this way, if only she did. But Nadia doesn't do the if onlys. She just takes the whole package.
Why do you think during life, with past relationships and just things that don't work our way, why do you think we keep going back to this thing of this, well, if this would have happened or if she was like this? To me, it's the most unhealthy thing you can do, because you're just wishing that would come back, but you're not realizing that it didn't happen because it was never going to happen. That makes sense.
A little bit. I think that everything in life happens for a reason. And look, I understand that, people question that about, how kids with cancer and, there's some terrible stuff that happens in the world, And yeah, it's true. But I think as far as my own life, everything happens for a reason, and people ask how I can hang out with Chad, who's my ex's husband. We go watch UFC fights together. We hang out. We're friends. And I go, you don't understand. Like, I want to shake his hand. I want to thank him for taking Nikki, really, because they were meant to be together. Nadia and I were meant to be together. So, I just think that everything that happens in life for a reason. It's just not until later on down the line you realized why it happened. Was there ever any beef between you and Chad? No, there wasn't. I mean, Chad, I knew Chad. Nikki and I knew Chad. They didn't get together until after we split up. But, there was some ego hurt. Like, how could this guy who was our friend, now be dating my, wife? But, again, putting ego aside, he's a good guy, and he's good to Asher. And Nikki was eventually going to end up with somebody. All I could probably ask for is that he loved, or that person loves Asher as much as I do, who's our son. And he does. He checks all the boxes. So, and that's what I had to do in my divorce. I had to just take ego out of it. And so did Nikki. Just take ego out of it and realize, I started dating I was a typical guy, started dating a younger, I wouldn't say cuter, but younger woman. And then Nikki put her ego aside and, ended up loving Nadia, and they're best friends. What is one thing that a lot of people are unfair about when they come to saying that a man shouldn't date a younger woman? Like, there's often this time where people will rule out that relationship working because of the age difference. What's the one thing that everybody thinks about a man dating a younger woman that's not true? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, I think that, Nadia's not that much younger. I think we're 8 years difference. That's not 7. That bad. No, it's not that bad. Especially now that, I'm in 46 and she's 38. So it's not, it'd be a little weird if, I was 28 and she was 20. But, yeah. I don't know if there's any misconceptions, or I think people judge it a lot. Like I said, I was a stereotypical guy. Unfortunately, I think it's, easier for guys than it is for women to date younger, and that says something about our society, but I don't know what it says. But it is easier for a guy to grab a younger girlfriend. So now what I want to ask you is, how has everything been going at Bright Antenna Records? How did you first get into the music business? That's a good question. So as this surreal story unravels, I'm actually partners with my ex-sister-in-law. Oh, wow. So when I was married to Nikki, we were in Montana, and we were talking with a friend of ours and sort of just talking about how crappy the music business is, or how crappy the music is on the radio today. This was back in, 2005, 2004. And I think Tiffany said, let's start a music label. Let's change the music industry. And thus spawned Bright Antenna. So I said I would help out from a business side, and interesting, because we kind of stumbled and thought it would be a lot easier than what we thought. Right? We just start a record label and sign bands, and that'd be it. Didn't really know about distribution. Didn't know about marketing or anything, and So we kind of flopped around for 2 years, and then something happened where our entertainment lawyer called me one day, and he said, I have this friend who's coming out of this big deal and wants to start over and move to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and start something new. And it turns out that his name's Braden Merrick, and he was the one who found the Killers, and got them their first record deal. Was a producer on Mr. Brightside, and then they fired him. And so he came in, gave us legitimacy, had a Rolodex. I don't know if you know what a Rolodex is.
Watch?
No, that's a Rolex.
Oh.
A Rolodex is what's on your phone with all your contacts. People used to have them on your desk. Okay. So he had a Rolodex of someone who had just sold 6 million records. So he had a lot of contacts in the business, music business, and he really put us on the right tracks.
What's the key to dealing with all the egos of all the different bands?
Well, I don't know about the bands. What really has turned me off, and it almost made me not stop listening to music, was the music executives.
I can imagine.
I mean, really, to the extent of you can't. As worse of a ego douchebag as you can imagine. I've been in rooms with these people. Who. It turned me off so much, the industry, but it gave me more motivation to do things differently. Now the bands are, the bands are another thing. The bands, I mean, even today, you don't necessarily need a music label. It's like you're, almost like a podcast. You don't need a radio station anymore.
Yeah.
You can just put out music, and it's the same way with music. But the problem is musicians, the most talented musicians are musicians because they solely use, I don't know which side of the brain, the left or the right is creative, but they solely use that side of the brain, so they don't have the business sense. And so, dealing with somebody who doesn't have that and trying to convince them of things is sometimes like banging your head against a wall. But we've signed a lot of great people, I'd say, not just great artists, but great people who, you met one of them, Drake.
Yeah, he's dope.
Yeah,
he's cool.
And he's a really good guy, and forget his music aside, just a good person. He's coming to, and he lived with me for 2 weeks. I think he's coming down on Tuesday and probably going to stay with me for 2 months. But it's difficult sometimes to deal with musicians.
Now, has Spotify and Tidal helped the music business, or do you think it's hurt it?
I think if there's any such thing as both, it's done both. I think from a help side, I'd say that the good news is more people are listening to music than ever. More people have access to music than ever.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's been great. So it's not like I'm in the shoe business and people, it was a fad to stop wearing shoes. That'd be screwed, right?
Yeah.
But I'm in a business now where more people are consuming the product than ever before in the history of music. Now, the question is how to monetize that, and no one's really figured out how to monetize because we're talking pennies instead of $19.95 or $15 when I heard a song on the radio that I liked. I had to go to the record store and buy the CD for $15 or $19. Now I can just go buy the single.
Doesn't it kind of hurt when you look at how much work and effort and how many listens you can get, but then you see what you made and you're like, man, that is not worth it at all?
Yeah. I mean, look, when you look at even some of the top streams on Spotify or Apple Music, I mean, billions of people listen to songs. And they're making pretty good money when billions of people are making songs. But even at 1 million, I think it's I forget the math, but it's like 0.001 cent per stream.
Yeah.
So a couple $100 for 1 million streams, but it's not that hard to get to 1 million, which is the crazy thing.
Has it been that cheap the whole time, or have there been kind of budget cuts over the last 10 years of this?
Budget cuts with the what they give you?
Yes.
There hasn't been budget cuts. I think actually and if you tell anybody, I'll deny it. But one, really good thing Trump did for the music industry is it modernized the copyright. He did that music law with Kanye or whatever. But it's going to change. I don't know how it's going to change yet because we haven't seen it yet. But it's modernizing copyright issues and statutory rates, not rate, but statutory rate that they have to pay. If you play a song over 30 seconds on the radio, legally you're supposed to pay the artist for the publishing, but it was never modernized for technology, for streaming, for Spotify and iTunes. So I don't know how it's going to change it, but I hope it will.
Now, what are some of your favorite memories over the years being in the music business? Best concerts, best events, craziest things that have happened?
One for sure is there's a legendary music venue in Denver, Colorado called Red Rocks, and it's literally an amphitheater built into the rocks. We have the Ford Amphitheater here.
Yeah.
So imagine that in the Rocky Mountains, acoustically perfect. And for an amphitheater to be acoustically good, even good, is a rarity because usually the sound sucks at those things. But because the rocks somehow hold anyways, it's legendary. And I've always wanted to be there. It's been a bucket list thing and go. But I got to go. Not only did I get to go, but I got to go see one of our acts, one of our bands on Bright Antenna that was playing at Red Rocks.
How crazy is that when that's happening and you're at this great area and you're like, man, my band is performing here?
It was pretty cool. I mean, it was a little. There was some drama that led up to it, and the manager tried to take a quick penny and thought he could get the band to a show in London, the UK, and then on a plane the next day back to the US with an hour and a half layover in Chicago, having to go through customs, mind you, with an hour and a half to get and then get to Denver. No way in hell. And sure enough, they missed their connector. So, this band was really just at the peak of blowing up, right? And one of the show that they were doing was for one of the biggest morning shows, tastemakers in Colorado, really the country. His name's Nerf. He had invited the Wombats. Anyway, so we had to scramble, and we ended up going really deep into our pockets and chartering them a plane to get from O'Hare or Chicago to Colorado. They landed in Colorado. They landed in Boulder. It was one of those things where I couldn't enjoy it. They got on the Red Rock site backstage 3 minutes before they were supposed to go on. No sound check, straight out of the plane, jet lagged. So I couldn't even enjoy Red Rocks until they took the stage. The lights went down, and then the music played. But it was a little stressful.
What are some markets that you love going to when you're with these bands? And what are some when you see on the sheet that you're going to be in this town on this day? What are some cities that you just look at and you're just like, ugh, I have to go there?
Well, I don't have to go anywhere, but I do try to get out, especially when they're on the East Coast or the East Coast because it's easy and my partners don't have to fly because they're all in California. I've been to some pretty crappy, especially when a band's just starting, you have to go to some pretty shady dive bar, towns. But one of the other big thing that happened, a sort of milestone, was we went on. They were on one of the bands was on a tour that really needed a bus, one of the tour buses because it was a festival. And so what happens at festivals is, they have you play, you can't leave until it's over, and then you got to go to the next city and play the next night. So you really need a tour bus. So anyways, we got these guys as a tour bus, and sort of a dream of mine or whatever is to be on be on a backstage, not only backstage, but on a tour bus and tour with a rock band. And even though I don't party, it's still, it was on the bus. It would be like a dream of mine. And sure enough, it happened, and I decided to go on tour with them for 5 days. And I was so disappointed, right? Because it was nothing, and it was you couldn't imagine how there was no way you could sleep on a tour bus. I mean, I'm 6'2", and I had a hard time. It was like sleeping in a coffin. So the bunks are stacked.
And there's a lot of bumps in the road, right? Like when you're going...
forget about the bumps. Yeah, the bumps are terrible, but and I'm not claustrophobic at all. But I have to say I was a little uneasy. Literally, there was probably, 5-6 inches above my head from the ceiling. So, and not only that there's this I guess misconception that what happens backstage and then the reality of what actually happens backstage.
Yeah.
You would think that there's, strippers and,
Coke everywhere.
naked Coke everywhere, just having sex wherever you want it. And really it's a bunch of people laying around doing nothing on their computer, just waiting to play.
That is the funniest part. I've worked the 97X concerts, and when you're in the back area, I'm just thinking they're going to be going crazy. Dude, they're all on their phone on Tinder. It's hilarious.
Yeah, or doing absolutely nothing, not talking to each other, and oh my god! So I actually ended up bailing a little earlier than the 5 days. I was like, okay, this was enough.
Do you think a lot of bands break up because they get sick of each other in these small little buses on the road?
I don't know if it's a main reason, but it's definitely a contributing factor. I mean, you have to really, you spend more time with these people than you do your own wives. Or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever it is, and kids. I mean, they're on to break a band. You have to be very committed to driving across this fine country of ours many times over and over.
How many relationships do you think end because of the road? If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know how many, but I would say it's probably a contributing factor to a lot of it, and not necessarily the jealousy or the cheating, or it's just. Some bands, the band that we really broke were the Wombats, and they spent, I think, on a 2-year period, I think they spent no more than 90 days at home out of those 2 years.
Dude, I know it's going to sound bad to say you almost are going to cheat, but man, if you go that long without having sex and without intimacy, I can totally see how bands just fall for somebody. I'm not saying it's right.
No.
I'm not saying it's good, but when you're so far
lonely,
removed from love, and at some point you're just sending text to your wife, not defending it, just saying I can totally see how the temptation.
Yeah, I don't think
just like,
I
miss this.
don't think you're justifying it. I don't think anybody can justify it, but you can maybe give some reasoning or it makes a little bit of sense. But the cash and prizes at the end or the bonus at the end is when you make it is. You can have your own tour bus. You don't have to share with 5 people, and you can bring your wife, and you see it all the time at big concerts. Like, I've been backstage for some pretty big shows, and they're all there with their wives and their kids. They bring them on the road with them.
Do they seem like they're trying to make up for lost time by trying to make their wives happy?
No, I think they're just doing what everybody who's, in love wants to do and be with their wife.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be away from, look, I travel a lot, and I'd be dishonest if I told you that one of my favorite sounds sometimes is the magnetic key of a hotel room and the little ding when the light turns green.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to open that door and they're not going to be screaming kids around. There's not going to be, my wife around. It's just going to be me in the room and the pay-per-view and, whatever I want. So, I think that, part of it's good, in spending time, but I don't know.
I was talking to a person recently. I won't say who it was, but it's somebody everybody knows. You would know too. And I was talking to him, and he was like, dude, you know what my favorite time of the day is, Hoppe? Because I asked him, like, what show do you watch on Netflix? Did you watch Bosch on Amazon? And this person and I, we talk a lot. So we've had talks over and over. And like about a month ago, the person said to me, he was like, you know what, Hoppe? I'm just going to be honest. He's like, you know what the best time of my day is? And I'm like, what? He's like, when I'm in traffic and I don't have the radio on, and I'm just sitting there and I don't have to go anywhere. He goes, that's my favorite time of the day. He goes, I don't have any crying kids. He goes, my wife's not bitching at me. He goes, I honestly love traffic. And I was like, man, that's depressing.
And that's not depressing. I mean, no, look, I see what that person's saying. Just like I said, it doesn't mean I don't love my wife. It doesn't mean I don't love my kids. It just sometimes I think a break, not a break, but a time apart. Look, it makes me love her, and not. It makes me love her, and also love being and grateful for my kids when I get home, or because there is a period when I'm gone a couple days where I miss them all, and then I come home and it's better. But I'd be lying to you said that time apart it's not my favorite. It's not something, but it is a, great sound when that little ding, or I don't know if it makes
the one
sound.
thing I've learned from my past relationships is you learn that you really can't be around each other all the time, or you're just going to get sick of each other real fast.
There's that. Right, and that's
and that's what's going to ruin a relationship. Is if you're with them 24/7, you're going to get sick of them real fast.
There's some people that can do it. I'll tell you. I mean, to the bright antenna, my ex-wife's sister, her husband is also a partner, and they work together every day, and then they go home. Some people can do it. Some people. There's a company I invested in California. It's a husband and wife, and they work together every day. And then they're together obviously at night and on the weekends. And these two, Tiffany and Scott, my ex-sister-in-law, they are always together. And look, it works for them. It would never work for me. Dude. And it would never work for my wife, because I wouldn't want to be around me for 24 hours, 7 days a week. I know I drive myself crazy. So I think it works for some situations. Some people can pull it off, but not me, though. No, thank you.
Now, let's picture Ben Swig in 6th grade, sitting at the desk in class. If you would have told him everything that's happened in your life since then, would he think it's real? Just the life you've lived?
I mean, in 6th grade, it's funny because my first sort of drug of choice was daydreaming. I was a big daydreamer, man. Like, I'd be in that classroom, but my mind would be somewhere else.
Dude, that was me the whole time. I'm just dreaming about what I want to do in radio. I'm half listening to the class.
Right. And you imagine it. So I was a big daydreamer, and I think that's sort of why I say drug of choice, because that's sort of what drugs and alcohol did for me. Is that physically I was there, but mentally I was somewhere else. But, if you had told me 24 years ago, the day that I got sober, that my life was going to be like this, I would have. Or if you had told me to write down what I thought my life would be like in 24 years, I would have undershot it by 100%.
Is it weird hanging out with your ex-in-laws a lot? Like, your co-host is your ex-brother-in-law. Like, you work with everybody that's an ex you work with. How do you do it? Like, is it honestly that good, or do you just make it work? No, I find it so fascinating, bro.
It's honestly that, it's genuine. It's
and that's what it seems like. That's what's so genuine and so unique about watching it from afar. Is like, if I were to hang out with my ex-in-laws, my fist would be clenched, and I'd be like, I cannot be around these imbeciles. But you guys all seem like you guys have it really well.
Is, did you always not like your in-laws?
They didn't really like me.
Okay, so the reason it works for us is because I genuinely like them, and my ex-in-laws, my ex, sister.
You guys were like friends,
right? So, and Nikki and I were friends. So that's if at the end of the day, yes, we weren't in love with each other, but we loved each other. So why shouldn't we, after our marriage, still, if we got things right, still like each other, right? Lisa, Dawn, Tiffany, her husband Scott, like, we all genuinely liked each other, and so after, why wouldn't we?
How weird was it working for Eddie, being like he was your father-in-law and you were working for him?
For me, one of the hard things was being Eddie DeBartolo's son-in-law. Everybody thought you'd probably think it'd be great, and it was great. I mean, he's one of the greatest men I know, and taught me more about business and life, and than any single human being on this planet, including my own dad. But my identity was exactly that. My identity was Eddie DeBartolo's son-in-law.
Did you feel like you would get these perks, but you actually earned them because you were working hard? But did you feel like people thought you were getting these perks because you were his son-in-law?
Yeah, and absolutely. That's why I actually wanted to sort of break out on my own.
Yeah, I can see that.
And he actually gave me the money, loaned me the money to start my own thing. And because somewhere along the line I realized, it hit me that I wasn't, whatever my title was at the company, I really, what I was chief executive son-in-law, and it was important for me to find my own identity. But look, he's the most genuine down to earth guy you've ever heard. People talk about Trump being the blue collar billionaire or whatever, but like Eddie DeBartolo is the most down to earth person. Like if he met you once, the next time you saw him, he would remember your name.
I've heard it about him,
and he treats everybody like that. I mean, it's uncanny how he remembers everything.
He seems like the type of guy where even if he's not teaching you anything while you're talking to him, you walk away from talking to him and you feel like you learned something.
And that was really the best lesson that he taught me.
Yeah.
Is just observing him and how he interacts with people and how he treats people was probably the single greatest lesson he taught me.
Just the way he has his like swagger, but he's laid back.
But just how he doesn't put any, treat anybody differently. Whether it's the bus boy or whether it's the president of the United States. It's like he treats everybody the same. He doesn't think he's better than anybody. And he, will give you the shirt off his back.
What were some of the craziest perks? Like when it was happening, it didn't seem like real life being with him.
Everything.
Yeah.
I think that, look, I was not born into a bad family myself. But much different. There's different levels of wealth. Obviously, there's, middle class, upper class, and then fuck you money.
Yeah.
And so, it's intoxicating. It's a drug in itself. Whether it be the private planes or whatever it is, it's a whole different world.
What was it like growing up in the Bay Area?
It was great, man. That's why it's taken me so long, and I say taken because it's still present tense to get used to Tampa. And there's nothing wrong with Tampa. It's just completely different than.
There's nothing similar. Nothing.
No, except for the surreal part of it is they call. I remember being here the first couple. What stood out to me the most was the first night we had moved from right in San Francisco to North Tampa in a golf community, and the first thing I remember vividly was how quiet it was. It was awkward, because I'm used to the horn honking, the bustle, everything, but I remember how quiet it was. But the difference. But then you turn on the news and they talk about the Bay Area. Like today in the Bay Area, the weather's going to be, 45 degrees or whatever it is. And then you watch sports and they talk about USF. But San Francisco is University of San Francisco, which is called USF.
That's weird.
So we watched the first couple of nights on the news. It kept on talking, today in the Bay Area, man was shot or whatever on the news. So it was weird at that point. So that's about the only similarities that they have. But no, actually, Tampa has developed. I don't want to say developed, but it's sort of like somebody woke up. I don't know if it was like 10 years ago or whatever, but whoever it was realized we have potential being a really great city.
What's been the biggest change in the last 20 years in Tampa? Because I've just been here 4.
I think the people, the younger generation coming, I think over time the people from University of Florida, Florida State, USF is one of the biggest. I think it's one of the biggest public schools in the nation, but they all stay here, and with that comes sort of a cooler, hipper element. Now, I will tell you that St. Pete, was way far ahead of Tampa as far as culture goes.
Yes,
restaurants, artists, museums, but Tampa's, someone woke up one day and said we have some potential. We have, put it this way. When I moved to Tampa, like you wanted to go get a good dinner, you could go get a good dinner, but it was at a chain. Even the nicest restaurants we had, besides Burns and, what's the other one? Armani's. But you want to go get a steak, it was Capitol Grill or, Ruth Chris's, which is great food, but it's chain. There were no really like unique restaurants. And now, the down by the waterfront, the Eulalys of the world, we're kind of becoming cool.
Where do you want to see your life in 5 years? Have you thought about it?
No, I don't, not really. I mean, I think that there's some things that I would want to accomplish as far as dumb things. Like not dumb. I want to get my back better is my first priority in
What
life.
type of back issues do you have?
I have a degenerative disc, and then some muscular problems, like potential autoimmune disease.
I have a bad back too, so I know where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's the worst.
It's debilitating, and until anybody is walking.
Does it just get worse as you get older?
Yes. I mean, well, no, because I never had a bad back.
Oh.
You know, I mean, it started maybe 8 years ago. I threw out my back for the first time, and then it would go, maybe 6 months, and then I'd throw it out again, and then the period between when I throw it out got shorter and shorter, and then the period that I was laid up got longer and longer. And then finally, I reached a point where I couldn't walk because I had nerve damage. But so that's the physically that's the goal, is to get my back better. And then it's almost like, I think we were talking on the show about New Year's resolutions. Like, I don't have New Year's resolutions, because all my life a New Year's resolution.
Mine is not working at all. I said I wouldn't be on social media as much. Dude, every single year I say I'm going to quit doing social media. I got to figure out how to do it.
Well, so that's exactly the point, right? All it is, what New Year's resolutions are good for? Gym owners.
Oh, they make so much money off that.
Because go to the gym on the first of the year, or, the first week of the year, and then go in March.
But then they make it so hard to cancel that you're just paying the $20 a month.
Exactly. So the New Year's resolutions are really only good for, because every New Year's resolution I've ever made, I've broken, within the first month.
Like gym owners probably get to go on the best vacations in like March and April because of all the money they made just from people joining.
But and not even how hard they make it to get out of it, but some people forget. Most people forget, and it's like an annuity. Debited it out of your account every month, and you're like, okay, I'm going to keep it this month and start going next month, or I'm going to start now, and it's the same thing as New Year's resolution.
So for me, I have like Sirius Radio, I have Spotify, I pay for Tinder. What are some things that you do in your free time that you pay for? Like if you watch TV, or you're a part of a club, or you go to a gym, what are some things you do?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I don't pay for porn.
Why? Anybody
who pays for porn's an idiot.
What I'm saying is, I don't know why anybody would pay for porn. You're an idiot. You can literally get anything, anywhere.
Exactly. So, well, you know what? I shouldn't say that. I did try to pay for porn once.
Why?
On Brazzers, I think it's called, because they, whatever, they didn't. They always had the hottest girls. And they were always the hardest to find.
And it's really good footage.
Right, and it's good footage, filmed in HD, and they do a good job of limiting the free stuff, so they only give you like 4 minutes or 6 minutes.
But just keep rewinding it. I don't need the 30 minutes.
So anyways, I paid for it
just
to see what, a paid porn site, and it wasn't any different. So I canceled it after a month. But what are some of the things I paid for? I paid for, unfortunately, I don't use it, but I pay way too much money for golf memberships. Belong to 2 country clubs, and I'm not able to physically play. What else do I pay for on a month? I have Spotify, I have Apple Music, I have 2 streaming services, which I have no idea why I have 2 streaming services.
I just have Spotify, and then I have Sirius Radio, but that's for the show. So
right, Netflix, Hulu.
All my friends give me their passwords. It's the best. Like I have Showtime anytime.
So do they add
HBO.
an account?
Yeah, you just...
Are you a cord cutter? I imagine you are, right?
Yeah.
You don't have cable?
No. So what I do is my friend, who I don't talk to anymore, I haven't talked to in 4 years, allegedly gave me his Frontier password. So I can't get like the shows live, but that's how I watch Ray Donovan. Or
so you can log in using...
the apps on the Apple TV.
Smart. And he hasn't changed his password?
Not in 4 years. And he actually quit talking to me. That's the best part.
That's brilliant.
The funny part is, though, he watches Ray Donovan as well. So I'll write down how many minutes he was in, because if he's watched the half of Ray Donovan, I don't want him to be like, why do the episodes keep resetting? So I'll be like, he was at 30 minutes and 30 seconds. So then I rewatch it, and then I have
You got a whole rhyme and reason to it. That's brilliant. You like really track so you don't get...
Because I can't lose that, bro.
No.
I need that. I need to watch Ray Donovan.
No.
The janitor's coming in. What's up, bro?
So what, I know it's your show, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Talk to me about Tinder.
Dude.
So it blows my mind. And honey, if you're listening, which you never will, but I am infatuated.
You know, right now she's probably doing yoga at the house or cleaning, and she's listening to this.
No, she's not listening. She'll
Really?
never. She wouldn't know where to find Hoppy Hour. She didn't. But
I'll tag you on Facebook. So
she can listen to it. She knows.
I know. Mm-hmm.
But I'm infatuated. And why the hell wasn't this available when I was single? Tell me about it.
I'm surprised it didn't work in the 90s. I feel like you could have had a low budget version of it. You could have had something on the
in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, on what?
On the computer where you could match right and left.
You
and
think
then
we had
send emails.
computers in the 90s, like internet?
Or 2000s. I'm saying like, okay, I was born in 93, so I don't really.
Okay, yeah. Well,
there was like messaging in the 90s in chat
like
room.
AOL?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was not in the 90s. That was, well, I guess it was like 90, 96, 97. Okay, 90s, yeah.
Pardon me, I was born in 93, so. I mean,
okay, so yeah, I think I got my first AOL account in 90s. I don't know, but it was dial-up. We didn't have.
That's true.
High-speed internet.
See, you're so far removed.
Sounds so old, man.
Well, no, I was alive for that, but I was just like 5 or 6. I know that
you
makes
grew
sense.
up with it.
Yeah. I remember the loud noises.
Oh,
I remember everything about that. It was the worst.
So the funniest thing is, we'll get to the Tinder thing, but I'll tell a story. So I got my first modem, got my first computer, and I hooked up the cord to the computer, and I couldn't get online, and I couldn't figure it out. And I called the wherever I bought the computer, we're doing troubleshooting, the whole deal. And what it was is, when you pick up your phone, I don't even know if you know this with a landline.
I had a landline.
When you have a message, it kind of does that beep beep before.
Yeah.
So the modem wouldn't dial up with that beep beep. So I had to clear all my messages before I could get online, and it took like 4 hours to figure it. All it was I had a message, and that isn't why I got online.
Or the worst part would be, like, for me, my mom would be on the phone, and I would have to wait for her to get off the phone, and she would talk to my Nana or my grandpa on the phone for like 3 hours. And by the time she was off and I wanted to play a game, it was like 8 p.m. and I had to go to bed. That was the worst part about the internet, was you couldn't be on the phone.
Right.
Oh, that was the worst.
Now, so get back to Tinder. So,
okay, yeah.
A guy like you, do you use it a lot? Is it efficient? Is it effective?
Yeah.
Do you get laid? Now, is it the type of thing where, have you ever had a encounter where you swiped and you guys hooked up like 5 minutes later? Or is it
2 hours?
2 hours.
Yeah. They just come to your place.
What? And how much? You don't pay for it?
No.
Yeah, come on.
I swear to God. Look, I'm opening it up right now. I've clicked through so many girls that there's no more in the area. What I do, I view it as a game. Some dudes take it so seriously. I swipe right on anybody.
So swipe right is
yes.
Yes.
Swipe left is no. I swipe right on everybody, because then when I get a new match, I go, is it going to be a good looking girl? Is it going to be a fake porn account? Or is it going to be a girl that I'm not into? Like, I view it as a game, because if you only go for the girls that you like and then you don't get any matches, your ego gets hurt. But if you go with everybody, then you view it as a game and you're like, oh.
So now, do you take, I have a rule, and this is when I was single.
Yes.
Between Nikki and Nadia, not online, but with profile pictures, right? I took 30% off. Like, if I thought she was a 10, I would take 30% off, because no one posts their bad picture of themselves on their profile picture, right? Yeah. I don't. I post a picture that I think is the best looking picture of me, and it's maybe not even necessarily a. Yeah, let me see your pictures. Hold on.
So my picture, the first one is me in front of the mic.
Right.
When I was board hopping.
Yeah.
And there's one showing my tall frame in front of a bunch of lights at a Christmas show. And then the next one is me looking all casual, like, hey, I'm cool to hang out with, in front of a Christmas tree.
Right. At
Drew's thing for Apple a day in November. And I'm wearing an ugly sweater. And you see the two snowmen, and the one snowman has a carrot on the lower part of his body. I'm edgy. And then my last photo is me at the punch out, because you got to show that I was a part of a boxing match.
Right.
Because you have to humbly brag. Because if you're average and you're just showing good looking selfies, a girl's going to be like, "What makes you any different?" But
so you're on it a lot. You've swiped right for every single woman in Tampa Bay.
I told Reezy here that that's like my third job when I have free time. Like, it's not taking up time for me to make money. But what I'm saying is, like, when I'm laying in bed at night and I'm just drinking a beer and I'm watching King of the Hill, I'll just swipe right.
So you're okay batting 100, meaning if you swipe right for 10 girls, you're okay with getting one.
Yeah, the thing about it too.
See, I wouldn't be okay with that.
The thing that I try to realize, and this is me being real, this is the most real thing I will ever say, because we've been real on this. My life almost got ruined last June if I would have got married in 2020. The fact that
Were you engaged?
Yeah, ring and everything, living with me. The fact that I got dumped is the best thing to happen for me. It's the worst thing emotionally, but the best thing, because now I know that I need to find the perfect girl. I need to not rush as much. So the thing that's good about Tinder and Bumble is the fact that the old me, I needed to be in a relationship. I would date this girl and date this girl. But now the fact that I got dumped by my ex in June, it's making me appreciate life. When I pet my cat at night, I'm happier. When I'm watching TV, I'm focused again. I'm watching sports. It makes me really realize how awesome being single is. And that's not me being grumpy about being single or being dumped. I truly am honest when I say that being single is my thing. Like, it's amazing.
So
I love the freedom.
So again, what I said before is nothing happens in life by mistake, right? And it's not until you get through it do you realize why it happened, right? I'm sure that if somebody told you that in June when you got dumped, you tell them to go, piss off.
If you would have told me the day before I met my ex, when I was all excited, that in 15 months you would piss off a lot of people at work and you would have gained 40 pounds and you'd be at the low point of your life, I would not go to that date.
Right. Or if somebody had told you that this, at your low point when she left, that this will be the best thing that ever happened to you, you probably would have punched him in the face, right? But until after the fact, and you learned you went through the pain, you went through all the heartache, but you got out the other side.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm afraid to date again because I'm just afraid of heartbreak again.
Well, that's a real thing. I mean, that is a definite truth. I mean, I know I was, and the decision to get married again was like, I don't want to go through this again. But I think that if you live in fear of that, you'll just be, swiping right, and you'll start going to other counties because you swiped all the way through.
But after a breakup, it's not that you were like a slut, but you basically, because the same thing with me, it's hard for me to be with one girl because I just want to see what's out there. Did you have that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I didn't handle it right, like we talked about earlier. I handled it like a guy with no morals or values whatsoever.
I'm kind of there right now. I'm just chilling.
Right, but if you're open and honest with it, there's nothing wrong with it. But I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I didn't handle it right.
See, every girl that I've been hanging out with, they quit talking to me after a few months because I'll tell them I'm not looking to settle.
Right.
But the thing that's hypocritical about me saying that I'm not looking to settle is I feel like if I were to find a girl that would make me feel the way I did about my last two exes, but felt even more genuine, I think I would settle with her if it felt right. And I really put thought into it. It's a really weird phase I'm at. I don't know if it's part of my quarter life crisis. It's just I do a lot of
quarter life crisis.
No. You can laugh all you want.
No, I've never heard that. That's funny.
It's a real thing. Like John Mayer made a song about it. Like, because you go like, I almost let my life go to waste. So I'm just really, I'm not going to need my friends' approval. Like, oh, you should date this girl. But I got to be 100% confident in it because I am not going to let more time in my life go to waste being with a girl that you just settle with. Like, I basically settled with my last two girlfriends in a way.
Right. No, and that's that you're never going to be 100% sure. But, if you keep on going through the red lights, and that's what I think when I look back at what happened with my ex-wife and I, is I went through every single red light. The warning signs or, whatever you want to call them.
Isn't it the worst when you look back on it and you go, how was I in such denial? How was I not seeing the issues? Because you just go, oh, it's going to get better. Or you go, oh, this and that. But like, you're so mad at yourself for not being honest with yourself.
Well, there's that. I don't know if I get mad at myself because, again, if I'm truly believe that it all happens for a reason, and that, I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I wouldn't go back. If you could give me a crystal ball right now
I think in time I'll feel the way you feel. I just think it's more fresh.
Yeah.
But I think it might be a case of you getting older and being more free to look back in the past and see what you learned from it. But I think because I'm 25 and younger, I think I just haven't reached that point yet. But I think...
Well, you said the key word is learn. If you don't learn from your mistakes, then you're just bound to repeat it, and then it's just insanity and doing the same thing over and over again, thinking it's going to be different, right? But if you learn from what happened, then it becomes a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and again, if you gave me a crystal ball and told me I could go back and change anything in my life, I don't think that I would change anything that's happened to me, whether that's the drug addiction, you know, whatever it is.
No, I know kids are never going to be perfect, but what are some things you're really going to hammer home to your kids throughout your life that you're going to try to teach them?
Do as I do. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I would, you know, one thing that, you know, I think pretty much is that I want to teach my kids is consequences. And not that, you know, my parents didn't do a good job of that, or I'm judging them, or they didn't do a good job of it, but they didn't know any better. And I think a lot of times, you know, whether I got in trouble at school or with the law or whatever it was, they were always there to bail me out. They did it out of love, but, you know, what happened was I kind of went through life thinking that there were no consequences to behaviors. So, you know, whether it's, you know, lying or getting in trouble or whatever my kids do, I make sure they understand their consequences and stick to them. You know, whether that's punishment, whatever it is, but the key that, you know, consequences are real. And consequences aren't bad. There could be positive consequences, but every action there's a consequence.
Have your kids heard your radio show?
Yeah.
What do they think
Ash
of it?
has been on it a couple times. You know, Izzy, my daughter, who is, I think she was probably 4 or 5. She was probably 4 at the time. She told Nadia to turn it off because she hates hearing Daddy. He's not very good on the radio. You know, one thing about kids, they're brutally honest. But yeah, they've heard it. Asher's been on it a couple times, and you know, they're probably the only people who listen to it.
Why should people tune in on the weekend?
I don't know, if they don't have anything else to do, or they want to be bored, they want to be put to sleep. You know, I think I think one thing that about radio that I've learned is it's no different. It's just having a conversation with somebody. You know, all we're doing right now is just talking, like we would if we were, you know, out in the coffee break room, whatever. And then we just happen to have mics in our face. You know,
best.
And that's what, you know. I'm not as enamored with it as you. Like, I didn't ever think that radio was going to be a thing for me, and it's not a thing for me. It's something I do once a week. I enjoy doing it, but it's amazing how simple it is, in the sense of when you have somebody like Dawn, who I've known forever, JoJo, who I've known for 20 years, when you have chemistry with somebody like that, how sort of easy it is. That, you know, I mean, the show probably shows, but we don't do a lot of show prep. You know, because what we found is when we used to do show prep, it kind of took away the authenticity of it a little bit, and we felt like we had to get to all these certain things. Now, it's not that we don't do show prep, but we just we throw out topics, and don't script things, and it just, I think, becomes a more authentic show. Because what happens, again, when we used to do like every single segment and every single minute, what it tended to do was we ended up not doing 80% of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know how quickly it goes by.
Not just that, but your show, to me, is like if you were at like a fancy party and it's like an open bar and it's just people talking and just shooting the shit.
Right. And that's, you know, again, I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do, because I didn't go to radio school, but you know,
it's very unique, because a lot of shows, we got to do this at 7:17 a.m. We got to do this at 8.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about your show, is you guys just chill.
Yeah, and it's just a conversation, and we try to, you know, our tagline or whatever is life out loud, and we all have life experiences. We all come from different areas. We've all been put, you know, Don and I both have the experience of being put into a situation that is, you know, unreal to some people, most people. It's unreal to us. It was unreal to me. It's unreal to him. So we have that experience. You know, JoJo, I saw her grow up. I think she's in her 30s now. I met her 20 years ago.
Is it weird?
It's great. No, I mean, I can, look, it's something when she was probably 12 years old when I first met JoJo. Now she's, having a baby and, being able to see somebody like that, grow up is amazing. To see the woman that she's become. It's great.
That has to be weird, though. Like, you were seeing her on the couch playing, let's say, if it was like Super Nintendo back then, and now you're doing a radio show with her.
Yeah, I mean, look, JoJo, so the way the radio show worked was JoJo and Don were doing a radio show. It was called The Fringe, I think, at the time. And it was on, tucked somewhere on way up high on the AM dial. And the owner of the station wanted to do a sports show. And I was actually on a layover from Tampa to San Francisco and Denver. And I got a call from Don. And he said, would you be interested in doing a radio talk show? Because Don had told the owner that he thinks he knows a guy. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do. Interested. I love sports, I'd love to do. But the guy didn't want to hire anybody else. So he wanted just to do by myself, never doing radio before, with a mic, talking about sports. Anyway, so I did a test for him. I went into Don's studio and I just talked about something. I still have it. It is the worst piece of. It should go down. If there's a radio museum, it should go down as the worst, most awkward, terrible 20 minutes in radio history. And the guy said, no, I think Don and him had a conversation or something, and I knew it was horrible because I sat there with him. I was like, "Look, man, I'm not cut out for this." And so Don calls me and goes, "Why don't you come on The Fringe and sort of get your sea legs and figure out if it's something you want to do?" And that was like 6 years ago, and I haven't, looked back. And then we changed the name, and we came over to the Bone, and never did the sports show. Although I'd like to do a sports show one day, but we'll see.
Well, dude, I see big things happening for you this year. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show, and everybody make sure to tune into Miggs and Swig, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 102.5 The Bone. Thank you for being on the show, dude.
Thank you, man. I know you catch a lot of crap around here, but I appreciate your hustle, and I respect your hustle and your dedication to what your dreams.
Thank you, dude.
And I think
appreciate it.
It's going to come true for you, man.
All right, thank you, bro.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.